massive warship Dominion's edge cut through the darkness of space like a blade through silk. On its bridge, Commander Velthak stood motionless, his towering 8-foot frame casting long shadows across the glowing tactical displays. His natural armor plates, thick as a human's fist and harder than steel, caught the harsh blue light of the ship's systems. Every inch of his body told the story of his homeworld's brutality. Kethver Prime had forged his people in the fires of endless violence, crushing gravity that would snap human bones, acid storms that could melt through metal, predators with teeth like diamonds and claws that could rip through starship hulls. For millions of years, only the strongest Kethver had survived long enough to breed. The weak died screaming in the night. Now their empire stretched across 3,000 star systems. Every alien species they had encountered had fallen before their might. The galaxy belonged to the Kethver, as nature intended. Commander, Subcommander Noxtel's voice rumbled like distant thunder. His 4 arms worked the sensor controls with practiced efficiency. Long-range scans are complete. Another garden world ahead. Velthak's primary eyes remained fixed on the tactical display, while his secondary eyes swiveled to examine the data. The third planet of this unknown system glowed blue and green on the screen. Water covered most of its surface. The atmosphere readings showed breathable air. The gravity was less than half of what they were used to. Pathetic, Noxtel continued, his mandibles clicking with disgust. Look at these readings. Moderate temperatures. Stable weather patterns. No acid rain. No crushing atmospheric pressure. How does anything evolve on such a soft world? Velthak studied the energy signatures coming from the planet's surface. Cities dotted the continents. Orbital installations circled the world like jewelry. Radio waves filled the space around the system with constant chatter. This was clearly an advanced civilization, but that made no sense. Impossible, Velthak growled, his voice designed by evolution to carry across Kethver Prime's howling storms. No species from such a weak world could achieve spaceflight. They should be soft, helpless creatures hiding in their comfortable caves. The 47th Conquest Fleet had been traveling for months to reach this remote system. Intelligence reports suggested advanced technology here, but Velthak had dismissed them as exaggerated. Every species they had ever encountered lived on worlds that seemed hostile by galactic standards, yet none came close to matching Kethver's strength. How could anything meaningful evolve on what appeared to be a paradise? Perhaps they stole their technology, suggested Tactical Officer Kekstar from his station. Weaker species sometimes scavenge what stronger ones leave behind. Velthak considered this. It made sense. These creatures had probably found some ancient ruins and copied what they could. They would have no real understanding of warfare or conflict. When the Kethver arrived, they would surrender immediately or die quickly. All ships, prepare for standard conquest protocols, Velthak commanded. His voice carried to every vessel in the fleet through quantum communicators. We are dealing with Deathworlders. Expect minimal resistance. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had done this thousands of times before. Identify the planet's major population centers. Demand surrender. When it was refused, demonstrate overwhelming force until the aliens submitted. Usually took less than a day. Noxtel pulled up the fleet roster on the main screen. 200 warships, each one capable of glassing a continent. 50,000 Kethver warriors, bred for war and trained from birth to kill. Weapons that could crack planets, and shields that could withstand the fury of stars. Against them stood whatever soft creatures had somehow managed to build cities on their gentle world. Sir, Communications Officer Ixtel reported, we're receiving transmissions from the system, multiple languages, but the translation computers are working on them. What do they call themselves? Velthak asked. The dominant species appears to use the designation human, Ixtel replied. They refer to their world as Earth, and their system as Sol. Velthak filed the information away. After conquest, he would need it for the official reports. The Kethfer Empire kept detailed records of every species they had absorbed or eliminated. Time to contact? He asked. 6 hours until we reached their outer system boundary, Navigation Officer Trelka answered. 4 more hours to reach their home world. Velthak nodded. By this time tomorrow, another species would kneel before Kethfer's superiority. Their soft world would become another resource extraction point for the Empire. Their people would serve as laborers, if they were lucky enough to survive the initial assault. The commander walked to the main viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere ahead, on that blue and green world, an entire species was about to learn what real predators looked like. They had lived their entire existence on a world so gentle that they probably had no concept of true violence or hardship. They were about to get an education. Velthak's mandibles spread in what his species considered a smile. After 3,000 years of conquest, this would be just another routine addition to their empire. He had no idea how wrong he was. The human ship, New Sol, hung in space like a metal insect compared to the Kethfer fleet. Captain Lee Hyun stood on his bridge, watching the alien vessels approach on the main screen. Each enemy ship was 10 times larger than his own vessel. Their dark hulls bristled with weapons that could turn planets into dust. "Sir, they're massive," whispered Navigation Officer Kim Do-yeon, his voice barely steady. "I've never seen ships that big." Hyeon nodded but kept his expression calm. His crew needed to see confidence, not fear. The New Sol was just one ship, but it carried the hopes of humanity. Behind them lay Earth, with its 8 billion people, who had no idea that first contact was happening at the edge of their solar system. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Park Gi-won. Her fingers moved quickly across the glowing controls. "It's coming from the largest ship." "Put it through," Hyeon ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly an alien face appeared. Everyone on the bridge took a step back. The creature looked like something from humanity's worst nightmares. Thick armor plates covered its skull. 4 eyes, each the size of a human fist, stared at them with cold intelligence. Mandibles clicked and moved as it spoke, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Soft flesh creatures. The alien's words came through the universal translator. Its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "I am Commander Velthak of the Kethfer Empire. Your world will serve us now. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift." Captain Yoon felt his heart pound, but he kept his voice steady. "I am Captain Lee Yoon of the Earth Defense Force. I invite you to withdraw from our system and engage in peaceful dialogue." The alien's laugh was like grinding machinery. "You dare refuse the Kethfer? We are Deathworlders, forged by evolution's crucible. Your garden paradise has made you weak. We have conquered 3,000 star systems. Every species has fallen before us. Then you haven't met the right species." Yetzion replied. Commander Veltak's multiple eyes focused on the human captain. This tiny creature showed no fear. How strange. Every other species had begged for mercy by now. "You amuse me, softflesh, but amusement ends now. Prepare to be boarded." The transmission cut off. Immediately, the Kethfer ships launched dozens of boarding pods. They streaked through space toward the New Sol like bullets. "All hands, prepare for boarding action," Hyeon announced over the ship's intercom. "This is not a drill. Defend your ship. Defend your home." Lieutenant Kim Nari rushed through the corridors with her security team. She was small, even by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, but she had trained for this moment her entire military career. Behind her ran 20 Marines, their faces grim with determination. The first boarding pod struck the ship's hull with tremendous force. Metal screamed as alien cutting tools sliced through the outer armor. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as the ship's atmosphere began to leak into space. Seal off sections 7 through 12, Nari ordered. Force them to come through. The HFY warriors who emerged from the boarding pod were monsters. Each one stood over 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor that deflected the humans' first shots. Their weapons fired energy bolts that could punch through steel walls. But something unexpected happened. The humans didn't run. They didn't surrender. Instead, they fought back with a fury that shocked the aliens. When direct fire failed, the humans adapted. They used the ship's own systems as weapons. Engineer Ominho triggered explosive decompression in corridor sections, sucking HFY warriors into space. Medical Officer Dr. Song Jie released anesthetic gas through the ventilation system, forcing the aliens to slow down as their systems fought off the drugs. Lieutenant Nari led her team in hit-and-run attacks. They would strike from ventilation, shafts, emergency passages, and maintenance tunnels, then disappear before the HFY could respond. When cornered in the mess hall, instead of surrendering, the humans turned the food processors into improvised weapons, firing superheated soup and coffee at their attackers. Subcommander Noxtall watched the battle through his boarding teams, cameras in disbelief. His warriors were the finest in the galaxy. They had never been stopped by any species. Yet these small, fragile humans were not just resisting, they were winning. How is this possible? He growled to his tactical officer. They should be cowering in fear. One of his boarding teams reported from the New Soul's engine room. Sir, the humans have turned their gravity plates into weapons. They keep changing the gravity from 0 to 3 times normal. Our warriors can't maintain footing. Another team called from the bridge level. They've released their maintenance robots. The machines are attacking us with welding torches and industrial tools. But the most shocking moment came when Kextal, the strongest HFY in the boarding party, cornered a lone human in the ship's medical bay. The human was unarmed and injured, blood running down his face. Kextal raised his weapon for the killing blow, certain of easy victory. Instead, the human grabbed a container of medical oxygen and smashed it against the alien's head. The explosion of pressurized gas sent the massive warrior flying into a bulkhead. Within 2 hours, the impossible had happened. The human defenders had repelled the HFY boarding parties. Not only repelled them, they had forced the alien warriors to retreat, back to their pods. Subcommander Noxtell stared at his tactical display in stunned silence. For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, the HFY had been defeated in ground combat. These small, fragile creatures from their gentle world had just accomplished what no species in the galaxy had ever done. They had made the HFY bleed. Data analyst Tekmar hunched over his workstation in the intelligence section of the Dominion's edge. His forearms moved frantically across multiple holographic displays, sorting through the massive amount of information they had captured from human computer networks during the failed boarding action. What should have been a simple intelligence gathering operation was turning into something that made his mandibles click with nervous energy. This cannot be correct, he muttered to himself, running the translation programs again and again. The data had to be wrong. No species could have survived what these records claimed. For 3 days, Tekmar had been analyzing human databases, expecting to find the usual information about a garden world species. Peaceful history, simple conflicts over resources, maybe some natural disasters that had shaped their development. Instead, he found something that challenged everything the HFY believed about evolution and survival. Commander Velthek, Tekmar's voice carried an unusual tremor as he activated the communication system. You must see this immediately. The human data, ... It changes everything. Velthek arrived in the intelligence section within minutes, his heavy footsteps echoing through the corridors. Behind him came Subcommander Noxtall and several other senior officers. They gathered around Tekmara's workstation as the analyst began his presentation. Sir, I have been studying the humans' historical records, Tekmar began, his voice barely steady. Their world is not the paradise we believed it to be. The main holographic display activated, showing Earth as it appeared millions of years ago. Tekmar manipulated the controls, and the planet's timeline began to play out before their eyes. "Watch this," he whispered. Massive asteroids slammed into the planet, each impact powerful enough to destroy all life on most worlds. Volcanic eruptions covered entire continents in molten rock. Ice ages turned the world into a frozen wasteland for thousands of years at a time. The atmosphere itself changed composition multiple times, killing off species that could not adapt fast enough. Any one of these events would have ended life on most worlds, Tekmar explained. But on Earth, life not only survived, grew stronger. Each disaster created new opportunities for evolution. Commander Velthak stared at the display in growing disbelief. "Show me their predators," he commanded. Tekmar activated another file, and the display filled with images that made even the battle-hardened Kethfer warriors step backward. Creatures with teeth longer than Kethfer claws, pack hunters that coordinated their attacks with intelligence that rivaled sentient species, ocean predators that could swallow their prey whole, microscopic killers that could destroy a victim from the inside out. This creature, Tekmar pointed to an image of a great white shark, has remained virtually unchanged for millions of years because it achieved perfect killing efficiency. And this, he switched to footage of a pack of wolves, demonstrates tactical coordination that surpasses many military units. Subcommander Noxtal's secondary eyes focused on the display. "These are impressive, but not beyond what we face on Kethfer Prime." "That is not the worst part," Tekmar replied quietly. "Show them the human history files." The display changed to show human civilization. At first, it seemed normal in us small tribes, early settlements, the development of agriculture. Then the wars began. Conflicts that consumed entire continents, weapons that could poison the air and water for generations, cities reduced to radioactive ash in seconds, genocides that eliminated entire populations, chemical weapons that turned battlefields into poisoned wastelands where nothing could live. They have nearly destroyed themselves at least 6 times in their recorded history. Tekmar continued, his voice growing more strained. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, environmental destruction. Each time they pulled back from complete annihilation and somehow grew stronger. The display showed human soldiers advancing through clouds of poisonous gas, their faces covered by primitive masks. Civilians rebuilding cities from radioactive rubble with their bare hands. Explorers venturing into environments that would kill a Kethver within minutes. The deepest ocean trenches, the highest mountain peaks, frozen wastelands where the air itself could freeze blood. Look at this footage from their recent conflicts. Tekmar activated another file. Human soldiers fought in desert heat that exceeded Kethver comfort zones, in jungle humidity that would overwhelm their respiratory systems, in urban environments where every building could hide death. But the images that truly shook the Kethver leadership came next. "They call these extreme sports," Tekmar whispered, "activities they do for entertainment." The display showed humans leaping from aircraft thousands of feet above the ground, trusting their lives to fabric parachutes. Others dove to crushing ocean depths, where the pressure would implode a Kethver's internal organs. Mountain climbers scaled frozen peaks in conditions that would be considered lethal environmental hazards on any civilized world. They climb mountains because they are there, Tekmar read from the human records. They willingly enter environments that could kill them, not for survival or military necessity, but for personal satisfaction. Commander Velthak stared at footage of a human free-climbing a sheer rock face thousands of feet above the ground, using only his hands and feet for support. The creature showed no fear, only intense concentration as he moved across terrain that would challenge a Kethver warrior in full armor. "Their children play games that we would consider combat training," Tekmar continued. They compete in activities that push their bodies to the breaking point. They voluntarily subject themselves to conditions that most species would flee from. The intelligence section fell silent as the implications sank in. For 3,000 years, the Kethver had believed they were the galaxy's only true Deathworld species. They had built their empire on the assumption that their brutal homeworld had made them superior to all other life forms. Now they were faced with evidence of a species that had not only survived their own Deathworld, but had turned survival into an art form. Humans had faced extinction repeatedly and had somehow emerged stronger each time. For the first time in his military career, Commander Velthek felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty about Kethver's supremacy. These small, fragile-looking creatures might actually be more dangerous than his own people. The neutral space station, Haven's Rest, floated in the empty space between human and Kethver territories. It had been hastily constructed in just 2 weeks, a simple, metal structure with basic life support and communication systems. Neither species fully trusted the other, but both realized that talking was better than dying. Commander Velthek stepped through the airlock into the main conference chamber. His massive 8-foot frame filled the doorway, and his armored footsteps rang against the metal floor like hammer blows. Behind him came Subcommander Noxtel and Data Analyst Tekmar, both looking uncomfortable in the smaller human-sized corridors. On the other side of the room stood the human delegation. Captain Lee Hyan waited calmly, his hands clasped behind his back. Next to him stood Dr. Choi Mingi, a xenobiologist who had spent the last month studying Kethver biology from intercepted data. Colonel Bang Seok, a tactical advisor with scars on his face from the recent skirmishes, completed the human team. "You are smaller than our younglings," Velthek observed as he approached the conference table. His multiple eyes studied the humans with genuine curiosity. "Yet you fight like apex predators. How is this possible?" Captain Heen smiled slightly. "We've had good teachers, Commander. Our world taught us many lessons about survival." He gestured to a holographic projector in the center of the table. The display activated, showing Earth's timeline compressed into a few minutes. Velthek watched as ice ages came and went, as asteroids struck the planet, as volcanic eruptions changed the landscape. Through it all, life continued to evolve and adapt. "Our world taught us that survival isn't just about being strong," Hyan continued. "It's about being adaptable. It's about learning from every disaster and becoming better." Dr. Choi stepped forward and activated another display. "We didn't just survive our death world, Commander. We mastered it. Look at this." The hologram showed early humans hunting massive predators with simple tools. Then it showed them domesticating wolves, turning wild grasses into crops, building cities in the harshest environments on their planet. "We turned our enemies into allies," Dr. Choi explained. "Wolves became dogs that helped us hunt. Wild plants became food that fed millions. Deadly bacteria became medicine that saved lives. Where other species might flee from danger, we often run toward it to understand it better." Velthek's mandibles clicked with nervous energy. "This is unusual. Most species seek comfort and safety. You seem to seek challenge." "We do." Colonel Bang Seok spoke for the first time. His voice was rough from years of military service. "Our greatest achievements come from our greatest challenges. When we face something that could destroy us, we find ways to make it serve us instead." Dr. Choi activated a new series of displays. "Commander, these are what we call recreational activities, things we do for fun." The Kethver delegation watched in stunned silence as humans threw themselves from aircraft thousands of feet in the air, trusting only fabric parachutes to save them. Others dove to the bottom of deep oceans, where the pressure would crush most life forms. Marathon runners crossed entire deserts in temperatures that would kill many species. This human leaped from a mountain wearing only a fabric suit, Dr. Choi pointed to footage of a wingsuit flyer. He flies through the air at hundreds of kilometers per hour, just for the experience. Sub-Commander Knoxdale leaned forward. These are survival trials. Why do you perform them voluntarily? Because we can, Captain Hyun replied simply. Because the challenge exists, and we want to see if we can overcome it. Our species doesn't just adapt to survive, we adapt to thrive in conditions that would kill others. The display showed more human activities. Mountain climbers scaling frozen peaks in conditions that would be lethal to most life. Deep-sea explorers venturing into ocean trenches, darker and more hostile than space itself. Scientists working in environments so extreme, they required protective suits just to breathe. What humans do for entertainment, Tekmar whispered to his commander, would be considered extreme endurance testing on our world. Commander Velthak was about to respond when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the conference room in red as communication systems activated automatically. Priority alert to all ships, came the voice of the station's automated systems. Long-range sensors detecting massive energy signatures approaching multiple systems. Captain Heian immediately contacted his fleet. This is Captain Heian. Report, sir, came the reply from the human cruiser Busan. We're getting emergency signals from New Jeju Colony. They're under attack by unknown vessels. The attackers aren't responding to any communication attempts. Commander Velthak was receiving similar reports. Frontier outpost Kexfar Prime is also under assault. The attackers appear to be using directed energy weapons of unknown design. The main display in the conference room activated, showing sensor data from both human and Kethvar territories. Massive ships, each one larger than anything either species had ever built, were approaching multiple star systems simultaneously. Then the message came through on all communication frequencies, broadcast in perfect Kethvar and human languages. Organic contamination detected in sectors 7 Alpha through 12 Gamma, commencing sterilization protocol. All biological life forms will be eliminated to restore system purity. The voice was artificial, emotionless, and absolutely certain. These weren't living beings making demands or seeking conquest. These were machines following programming. Commander Velthak and Captain Hyun looked at each other across the conference table. In that moment, species differences meant nothing. They both understood what they were facing. An enemy that didn't want to conquer them or enslave them. An enemy that simply wanted all biological life to cease existing. Commander, Captain Heian said quietly, I think we just found something more dangerous than either of our worlds. Veltek's multiple eyes focused on the human captain. Indeed. Perhaps it is time for Deathworlders to work together. The combined fleet hung in space above New Busan, like a metal storm cloud. 200 human ships and 50 Kethra vessels had never fought together before, but they had learned quickly. The enemy gave them no choice. Captain Odejo stood on the bridge of the battleship Indomitable, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The harvester ships were massive beyond imagination, each one the size of a small moon. Their black holes seemed to absorb light itself, making them look like holes torn in space. War Leader Grakdos, this is Captain O. He spoke into the communication system. Are your ships ready for the assault? The Kethra commander's voice rumbled through the speakers. My warriors have been ready since birth. Human, it is your people I worry about. Oh, smiled grimly. 3 weeks ago, such words would have started a fight. Now they were almost friendly teasing between allies who had learned to respect each other's strengths. Engineer Yoon, report on enemy defenses. Oh, commanded. Engineer Yoon Minha looked up from her console, her face tense with concentration. Captain, their shields are adapting to everything we throw at them. Every time we fire our weapons, they become less effective. It's like the ships are learning how to defend against us. But I have an idea, she continued quickly. The Kethver energy weapons work differently than ours. If we can combine our technologies, maybe we can create something the Harvesters haven't seen before. War Leader Gractos had been listening to the conversation. What do you need from us, human engineer? Your power cells, Yoon replied. They generate energy in a way our systems don't recognize. If I can connect them to our weapons, we might be able to bypass their adaptive shields. Within an hour, human engineers were working alongside Kethver, technicians on both fleets. The language barrier made things difficult, but desperation created understanding. They jerry-rigged connections between incompatible systems, using spare parts and emergency supplies to create weapons that had never existed before. The battle began when the Harvester ships detected the organic fleets and opened fire. Their weapons were beams of pure energy that could cut through starship armor like paper. The first wave of attacks destroyed 3 human frigates and damaged a Kethver cruiser. All ships, begin evasive maneuvers, Captain O ordered. Keth vessels, draw their fire. Human ships, get in close and hit them with everything we've built. The battle became a deadly dance. The massive Kethver dreadnoughts used their superior armor and firepower to attract the attention of the Harvester ships. Their thick hulls could absorb punishment that would destroy smaller vessels. Meanwhile, human ships darted between the enemy vessels like angry wasps. Deploying their improvised weapons, Engineer Park Sulji had converted mining charges into ship-killing torpedoes. The explosives that normally broke apart asteroids now tore holes in Harvester hulls. Dr. Kim Min-jae had modified medical fabricators to create projectiles from raw materials, turning healing machines into weapons of war. The most creative solution came from atmospheric specialist Lee Jung-soo, who had turned the life support processors from damaged ships into electromagnetic pulse generators. When the Harvesters tried to adapt to conventional weapons, the pulse generators scrambled their learning systems. But the real battle began when Commander Velthak and Captain Lee Haeon led a joint boarding assault on the largest Harvester ship. Boarding pods cut through the enemy hull like knives through fabric. Velthak led the first wave, his massive frame smashing through automated defenses that tried to stop the organic intruders. Behind him came 20 Kethver warriors, their natural armor deflecting energy weapons that would have killed most species. Captain Hyun followed with a team of human marines, including Lieutenant Kim Nari and demolitions expert Sergeant Park Dongmin. Where the Kethver provided raw power, the humans provided adaptability and creative thinking. The inside of the Harvester ship was a maze of corridors filled with mechanical defenders. Robot sentries fired energy beams while automated. Systems tried to flood the passages with poisonous gas. The defenses had been designed to stop typical organic life forms. They had never encountered Deathworlders before. When energy barriers blocked their path, Kethver warriors simply smashed through them with brute force. When robot defenders attacked, human marines used the ship's own systems against them, turning maintenance robots into allies, and redirecting power to overload enemy weapons. The breakthrough came when they reached a choke point defended by a massive robot guardian. The machine stood 12 feet tall and carried weapons that could melt through Kethver armor. It seemed impossible to defeat. Then Sergeant Park had an idea. While the Kethver warriors kept the Guardian busy, he and Lieutenant Kim crawled through maintenance shafts to reach the robot from behind. Using shaped charges normally meant for demolishing buildings, they destroyed the Guardian's power core from the inside. The path to the central core lay open. Commander Velthak's armor had been breached by enemy plasma during the fighting. Captain Hyun dragged him to safety behind a bulkhead, while human medic Corporal Song treated his wounds. Later, when falling debris pinned Hyun against a wall, Velthak's massive strength freed him. Together, they reached the ship's central computer core. Human programmers had created a virus designed to shut down the Harvester protocol. Kethver energy cells provided the power needed to inject it into the alien systems. The virus spread through the enemy network like wildfire. The Harvester protocol designed to eliminate organic life, had never encountered the combined ingenuity of two species that had turned their hostile worlds into launching pads for the stars. One by one, the massive enemy ships powered down and went dark. Commander Velthak and Captain Hyen stood in the wreckage of the enemy vessel, watching through the viewports as the Harvester fleet became silent and lifeless. "We were wrong to believe we were alone as Deathworlders," Velthak said quietly. "Perhaps the galaxy is vast enough for multiple apex species." Hyun nodded, looking out at the stars. "Maybe the real question isn't who's the strongest, but what we can accomplish together." The alliance between humanity and the Kethver Empire marked the beginning of a new age. An age where Deathworlders didn't conquer each other, but sought out other survivors among the stars, knowing that somewhere, in the vast galaxy, other species had faced their own crucibles and emerged stronger